The ultimatum. The holographic projection of Emperor Kisvor flickered across every screen on Earth, his reptilian features casting an otherworldly glow through the darkness of countless homes, offices, and public spaces. The message was clear: submit or face annihilation. As the transmission looped endlessly, humanity faced its greatest test. In the United Defense Council's underground bunker, located deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Nathaniel Hudson stood before a wall of screens, each displaying different angles of the massive alien fleet hovering just beyond Mars' orbit. His weathered hands gripped the tactical table until his knuckles turned white. "They've positioned themselves perfectly," Admiral Sarah Chen noted, her finger tracing the holographic display. "Their ships are arranged in a torus formation. They can strike Earth from multiple vectors while maintaining defensive coverage." Lucas Harrington, Earth's chief diplomatic officer, studied the fleet configurations with careful attention. Unlike his military counterparts, who saw weapons and tactics, he saw something else entirely: fear. The Empire's display of overwhelming force betrayed their own uncertainty. "They're afraid," Harrington said suddenly, drawing surprised looks from around the room. "Look at their positioning. It's not just tactical, it's theatrical. They want to intimidate us because they're not sure what we're capable of." General Hudson scoffed. "Afraid? They have enough firepower to glass half the planet." "And yet they haven't," Harrington countered. "They're giving us a choice. Empires that are truly confident in their superiority don't negotiate, they simply take what they want." Dr. Elena Santos, head of xenobiology, stepped forward. Her latest analysis of the Empire's biological data scrolled across her tablet. "Lucas might be onto something. Our studies of their physiological responses suggest they're highly hierarchical, but also deeply paranoid. They've conquered dozens of species, but they've never encountered one quite like us." The room fell silent as a new transmission cut through their deliberations. The Empire was demanding an immediate response. They had 6 hours to decide the fate of humanity. "We need to buy time," Hudson argued. "Our Aegis defense system isn't fully operational. Give us 2 weeks, and we might have a fighting chance." Harrington shook his head. "They won't give us 2 weeks. But maybe we can give them something else to think about." He turned to Dr. Santos. "Those physiological studies, what else do they tell us about imperial psychology?" A smile crossed Elena's face as she understood where Harrington was going. "They're obsessed with status and face-saving. In their culture, to be publicly challenged is worse than death." "Then we'll give them a challenge they can't ignore," Harrington said, already drafting the response in his mind. "But we'll do it in a way that forces them to play by our rules." The next hour was spent in intense preparation. While military commanders readied their forces and scientists worked to strengthen Earth's defenses, Harrington crafted humanity's response with surgical precision. Each word was chosen not just for its immediate impact, but for the psychological warfare it would wage. As Harrington prepared to deliver Earth's response, Dr. Santos made a startling discovery. "Their communication signals, they're not just broadcasting to us. They're transmitting to their entire empire. This is a show of force for their own people as much as it is for us." Harrington's eyes lit up. "Then we'll give them a show they'll never forget." The broadcast chamber was cold and sterile, but Harrington stood tall, his posture relaxed but commanding. Behind him, a simple Earth flag hung in elegant folds. No weapons, no displays of military might, just a man in a suit, representing humanity with quiet dignity. The transmission began, and Emperor Kisvor's massive visage appeared on the opposite screen, expecting to hear humanity surrender. Instead, Harrington smiled, a gesture that sent immediate ripples of confusion through the imperial court. "Emperor Kisvor," Harrington began, his voice carrying a warmth that belied the steel beneath, "humanity has received your generous offer. We've studied your empire's history, your conquests, your methods of subjugation. We've analyzed your fleet positions, your weapon capabilities, and your tactical doctrine. But most importantly, we've understood something fundamental about your empire that perhaps you yourself have forgotten. The Emperor's scales flickered with barely contained rage at the implied insult, but protocol demanded he let Harrington finish. You see, Emperor, every species you've conquered had something in common: they were afraid to die. But humanity? Harrington's smile widened. We've been preparing for this moment since we first looked up at the stars. Not because we feared alien invasion, but because we hoped for it. Because we wanted to meet our cosmic neighbors, to learn from them, to grow with them. And yes, if necessary, to fight them. Gasps echoed through the Imperial Court as Harrington continued, his words broadcasting across the galaxy. So here is humanity's response to your ultimatum: we decline both options. Instead, we offer you a third path: recognition of Earth's sovereignty and the beginning of diplomatic relations between equals. Because make no mistake, Emperor Kisvor, while you see a primitive species ripe for conquest, we see an empire that has become so accustomed to easy victories that it has forgotten how to face a real challenge. The Emperor's facial scales darkened with fury. You dare dash? I dare, Harrington cut him off smoothly, causing more shocked whispers among the Imperial Court. Because while you threaten us with annihilation, we promise you something far worse: resolution. Whether through peace or war, humanity will resolve the question that has haunted your empire for generations: what happens when you face a species that isn't afraid to burn brightly, even if it means burning briefly? The psychological warfare was evident. Every word was calculated to undermine the Empire's confidence while broadcasting humanity's determination to the watching galaxy. As Harrington spoke, Dr. Santos' instruments detected increasing stress patterns in the Imperial observers. The Empire had expected submission or desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, they faced something unprecedented: a species that challenged not just their military might, but the very foundations of their imperial psychology. You have 6 hours to consider our counterproposal, Harrington concluded. Choose wisely, Emperor. Because while you offer us a choice between submission and annihilation, we offer you something far more intriguing: the chance to evolve beyond conquest, to become something greater than an empire of fear. The galaxy is watching, Emperor Kisvor. What story shall we tell them? The transmission ended, leaving the Empire's representatives in stunned silence. Back in the bunker, Hudson turned to Harrington. Either you've just saved humanity, or you've damned us all. Harrington straightened his tie. Perhaps. But at least we'll face whatever comes next on our terms, not theirs. As Earth's military forces mobilized and civilians headed to shelter, the world held its breath. Harrington's gamble had changed the game, but whether for better or worse remained to be seen. The next 6 hours would determine not just the fate of humanity, but perhaps the future of the entire galaxy. In orbit, Earth's defensive platforms hummed to life, their weapons charging as they tracked the Imperial fleet's movements. The space between Earth and the alien armada crackled with tension, each side waiting to see who would make the next move in this cosmic game of chicken. The clock was ticking, and humanity had just changed the rules of engagement. The question now was, how would the Empire respond to a species that refused to play by their rules? The Empire's response. The 6 hours following Harrington's bold response were the longest humanity had ever experienced. In cities across the globe, people huddled in designated shelters, their eyes fixed on screens displaying the looming Imperial fleet. But something unexpected was happening in those crowded spaces. Instead of panic, there was a growing sense of resolve. In New Delhi, a group of teenagers had begun broadcasting Harrington's speech on loop, adding their own translations in dozens of languages. From the favelas of Rio to the skyscrapers of Shanghai, humanity wasn't cowering, they were preparing. Back in the command bunker, Dr. Elena Santos burst into the Strategic Command Center, her tablet displaying a cascade of incoming data. You need to see this, she announced, interrupting a heated debate between Hudson and the Joint Chiefs. The Empire's internal communications, they're in chaos. Harrington looked up from his diplomatic briefings. Explain. Their rigid hierarchy is working against them, Elena explained, projecting a complex network of imperial communications onto the main screen. Harrington's speech didn't just challenge the Emperor, it challenged their entire social structure. We're picking up transmissions from at least 3 different imperial factions, all arguing about how to respond. Admiral Chen leaned forward, her cybernetic eye whirring as it analyzed the data. These patterns suggest their fleet commanders are divided. Look at these ship movements, they're subtle, but some vessels are repositioning themselves away from their battle groups. Political infighting? Hudson asked, a glimmer of hope in his voice. More than that, Harrington mused, studying the patterns. We've triggered a philosophical crisis. Their entire empire is built on the assumption that other species will choose survival over freedom. We just proved that assumption wrong. The bunker's AI assistant, Arya, interrupted with a priority alert. Multiple quantum signatures detected. The Empire is receiving reinforcements. The room fell silent as new ships began appearing at the edge of the solar system. But something was off about their formation. Those aren't battle groups, Chen realized, her cybernetic eye rapidly analyzing the new arrivals. Their energy signatures are all wrong. Those are diplomatic vessels. And she paused, double-checking her readings, merchant ships. Dr. Santos quickly cross-referenced the data with their xenological database. Not just any merchant ships. Those are representatives from the Empire's client states, the species they've conquered over the centuries. Harrington's eyes widened as he understood the implications. We haven't just challenged the Empire. We've given hope to every species they've subjugated. A new transmission cut through their discussion. Emperor Kisvor's image appeared once again, but something had changed. The imperial regalia was the same, the backdrop just as magnificent, but there was a newfound tension in his posture. Representatives of Earth, the Emperor began, his voice carrying an edge of carefully controlled fury, your response was unexpected. You speak of resolution, of evolution beyond conquest. Your words have stirred dangerous thoughts throughout our domain. The Emperor's scales flickered with changing colors, a sign of intense emotional strain that Dr. Santos had never seen before. Therefore, we propose a test of your conviction. The Empire challenges Earth to the right of galactic arbitration. Gasps filled the command center. Even Harrington looked shocked. What's the right of galactic arbitration? Hudson demanded. Dr. Santos was already pulling up ancient imperial records. It's unprecedented. The right hasn't been invoked in over 10,000 years. It's a ritual challenge that predates the Empire itself. The terms are simple, Emperor Kisvor continued. 3 trials, mind, spirit, and force. If Earth prevails, we will recognize your sovereignty and grant you equal status within the galactic community. If you fail, your surrender must be absolute and unconditional. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. You have 1 hour to accept or decline. Choose wisely, humans. The galaxy indeed watches, as you so boldly proclaimed. Let them watch what happens to those who dare challenge the natural order. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. It's a trap, Hudson stated flatly. Of course it's a trap, Harrington agreed, but it's also an opportunity. They're trying to turn our challenge back on us, make us play by their rules. But look at what's really happening. He gestured to the tactical display, where more ships were arriving, not just imperial vessels, but ships from dozens of species. We've forced them to acknowledge us in front of the entire galaxy. If they simply destroyed us now, it would show weakness. Dr. Santos's analysis continued streaming across the screens. The right of galactic arbitration is deeply embedded in their cultural mythology. It's seen as a divine test, beyond even the Emperor's authority. By invoking it, they're bound by traditions older than their empire. Can we win? Hudson asked the question everyone was thinking. Unknown, Arya responded, its quantum processors analyzing countless scenarios. Historical records of the trials are deliberately vague. Each rite is tailored to the challenging species. That's not the right question, Harrington interjected. We've already won the first battle. The Empire wanted to present us as primitive upstarts. Instead, we've forced them to treat us as equals under their most sacred traditions. Admiral Chen's cybernetic eye pulsed as she processed tactical simulations. The trials will be designed to humiliate us, to prove their superiority to the watching galaxy. Then we'll have to disappoint them, Harrington smiled. Because we're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for every species that's ever dreamed of standing up to the Empire. The strategic implications were staggering. Earth had somehow stumbled into a position where they could potentially reshape the galaxy's political landscape. But the risks were equally massive. If we accept the right, Dr. Santos warned, we're betting everything on our ability to overcome challenges designed by an empire that's had millennia to perfect the art of breaking other species' will. And if we decline, Harrington countered, we prove them right about us. We show every watching species that resistance is futile. Hudson stood, his decision made. Send our response. Earth accepts the right of galactic arbitration. As Harrington prepared to broadcast humanity's acceptance, Dr. Santos made another discovery that changed everything. The trials, they're not just tests. They're broadcast throughout the galaxy as entertainment. The Empire uses them to demonstrate their superiority. Then we'll give them a show they'll never forget, Harrington declared. But this time, the story won't end the way they expect. The acceptance was transmitted, short and dignified. Earth embraces the right of galactic arbitration. May the trials reveal truth to all who watch. As the message went out, the Imperial fleet began moving into a ceremonial formation. The right of galactic arbitration had begun, and with it, humanity's greatest test. But in accepting this challenge, Earth had already changed the game. The Empire had hoped to make an example of humanity. Instead, humanity was about to make an example of them. The trial of mind. The Imperial arbitration vessel descended through Earth's atmosphere like a falling star, its crystalline structure refracting the morning sunlight into rainbow cascades. The location for the first trial had been chosen by ancient algorithms, the Great Court of the Forbidden City in Beijing, its ancient stones now shadowed by the massive alien ship hovering above. The global broadcast reached every corner of Earth, and thanks to Imperial transmission protocols, every corner of the galaxy. Humanity was about to face its first trial, and nobody knew quite what to expect. The trial of mind, Dr. Santos explained to the hastily assembled Earth Council, traditionally tests not just intelligence, but wisdom. The ability to see beyond the obvious, to understand deeper truths. The Imperial Arbiter, a tall, ethereal being named Kolvex, emerged from the crystalline ship. Unlike the military commanders of the Empire, the Arbiters were said to be genetically engineered for absolute neutrality, their minds enhanced to process multiple dimensions of thought simultaneously. People of Earth, Kolvex's voice resonated across the courtyard, the first trial begins. You may choose 3 representatives to face the challenge of perspectives. Harrington stepped forward, along with Dr. Santos and, surprisingly, a young quantum physicist named Maya Patel who had been monitoring the Imperial fleet's energy signatures. They had been chosen not just for their intelligence, but for their radically different ways of thinking. The Arbiter raised his crystalline staff, and the air itself seemed to fold. A massive holographic maze materialized in the courtyard, its walls shifting and changing like liquid mercury. But this was no ordinary labyrinth, each wall showed fragments of different realities, different possible futures. The challenge of perspectives requires you to navigate not just space, but probability, Kolvex explained. Each path you choose shapes reality itself. You must reach the center, but more importantly, you must understand why your journey matters. You have one standard galactic hour. Begin. As the 3 humans entered the maze, they quickly realized the true nature of the challenge. Each intersection presented them with possible futures. Some showed Earth prospering under imperial protection, others showed humanity maintaining independence but struggling with isolation. Some paths revealed technological wonders, others promised security at the cost of freedom. It's not about finding the center, Maya realized, her quantum-trained mind racing. The maze itself is a metaphor for choice and consequence. They're testing our values as much as our intelligence. Dr. Santos studied the shifting images carefully. Look at how they're presenting the choices. Each positive, imperial future is shown with subtle markers of submission, architectural styles, clothing, even body language. They're trying to see if we can detect manipulation. Harrington smiled. Then let's show them how humanity makes decisions. Instead of simply choosing paths, the team began analyzing the underlying patterns. Maya used her understanding of quantum mechanics to decode the maze's probability structure, while Dr. Santos applied xenological principles to interpret the cultural subtexts hidden in each vision. But it was Harrington who noticed something everyone else had missed. "We're not the only ones being tested," he said, pointing to the spectators. The maze's walls were reflecting not just possible futures, but the reactions of the watching galaxy. Every choice they made was sending ripples through the gathered representatives of countless subjugated species. "The Empire thinks this is about testing our wisdom," Harrington continued. "But they've inadvertently given us a platform to demonstrate an entirely different kind of intelligence." What happened next would be debated in imperial universities for centuries to come. Instead of trying to reach the center, the Earth team began using the maze itself as a communication tool. They deliberately chose paths that revealed the Empire's manipulative tactics, not just to demonstrate their understanding, but to educate the watching galaxy. Maya's quantum insights allowed them to briefly stabilize the shifting walls, turning them into mirrors that forced the Empire to confront its own contradictions. Dr. Santos's xenological expertise helped them craft choices that resonated with the cultural values of the watching species. And Harrington's diplomatic instincts turned each decision point into a subtle message of resistance and hope. The Arbiter's crystalline features showed the first hints of surprise. This was not how the trial of mind usually proceeded. Most species tried to solve the maze either through pure logic or by attempting to please the Empire. Humanity was doing neither, they were using the trial itself as a means of galactic communication. With 15 minutes remaining, they finally approached the maze's center. But instead of immediately entering, they stopped. "The real test," Harrington announced, his voice carrying to all observers, "isn't about reaching a destination. It's about understanding that every path we choose affects not just ourselves, but everyone who watches and learns from our choices." Maya stepped forward, her quantum calculations complete. "The maze shows us possibility, but possibility without action is just theory. Humanity doesn't just think, we act." Dr. Santos completed their response by addressing the maze itself. "You offer us visions of futures where we submit or struggle. But you haven't shown us the future we actually want, one where species learn from each other as equals." The maze's walls trembled, and for a moment, the imperial representatives seemed to hold their breath. Then, something unprecedented happened. The walls began showing new visions, futures that hadn't been programmed into the trial. Futures born from the intersection of humanity's defiance and the maze's quantum probability engine. Colvex raised his staff, officially ending the trial. "Humanity has reached the center," he declared, though everyone knew that wasn't quite true in the physical sense. "More importantly, they have demonstrated an understanding of perspectives that extends beyond the boundaries of the test itself." The imperial representatives were visibly disturbed. The trial of mind was supposed to humble species by showing them the futility of resisting imperial wisdom. Instead, humanity had turned it into a demonstration of their ability to think beyond the constraints of the challenge itself. As the maze dissolved, Harrington turned to his teammates. "That was just the first trial," he reminded them. "They'll adapt their strategy for the next one." Maya nodded, her mind already processing the quantum implications of their success. They expected us to play their game by their rules. Instead, we changed the nature of the game itself. Dr. Santos was busy recording the reactions of the various alien species. Look at the Centaurians, she whispered. Their color patterns, they're displaying hope for the first time since their conquest 3 centuries ago. The Earth team had passed the trial of mind, but more importantly, they had shown the galaxy that there was more than one way to face a challenge. They had demonstrated that true wisdom sometimes means refusing to accept the limitations others place upon you. As they returned to the Earth delegation, Hudson met them with a rare smile. "Well done," he said, "but don't celebrate yet. The trial of spirit will be different. They'll make sure of that." Looking up at the Imperial fleet still hovering in orbit, Harrington couldn't help but agree. They had won this round by surprising the Empire. The next trial would be designed to ensure that strategy wouldn't work twice. The trial of spirit. 3 days after the trial of mind, the Imperial arbitration vessel appeared over the Sahara Desert. This time, the location seemed chosen specifically to emphasize humanity's vulnerabilities, a harsh, unforgiving environment that highlighted the relative comfort of Imperial technology hovering above. The global anticipation had reached fever pitch. Humanity's unexpected success in the first trial had sparked something unprecedented: hope. Not just on Earth, but across the galaxy. Imperial data networks were buzzing with discussions about human unpredictability, about their refusal to accept predetermined paths. But the Empire had no intention of allowing a repeat performance. The trial of spirit, Colvex announced to the assembled representatives, tests more than mere resolve. It probes the very essence of a species' character. The Arbiter's crystalline form seemed to absorb the desert sun, refracting it into patterns that danced across the sand. You will face your own nature, stripped of technology, stripped of pretense. This time, the Empire had demanded that Earth's representatives be chosen by lottery, no strategic selection allowed. The randomization was meant to prevent Earth from fielding another perfectly balanced team. The 3 chosen representatives couldn't have been more different: Sarah Chen, a high school teacher from Vancouver, Marcus Rodriguez, a deep-sea welder from Brazil, and Aisha Patel, a grandmother and community organizer from Mumbai. None of them were soldiers, scientists, or diplomats. They were simply human. Harrington watched from the command center, his jaw tight with concern. "They're trying to prove that our success in the first trial was due to careful selection rather than any inherent human quality." Dr. Santos nodded, her instruments tracking subtle changes in Imperial energy signatures. "They want to demonstrate that average humans can't match their standards. But they don't understand, there's no such thing as an average human." The trial began with a deceptively simple premise. The 3 representatives were transported to separate locations in the desert, each facing a different challenge that seemed impossible without technology or special training. Sarah found herself at the edge of a massive sinkhole, where something that looked suspiciously like an Imperial data core lay at the bottom, surrounded by unstable sand. Marcus stood before a shimmering barrier of energy that contained what appeared to be a group of alien children in distress. Aisha faced an ancient doorway covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change every time she looked at them. "Each challenge offers a choice," Colvex explained to the watching galaxy. "Save yourselves, or risk everything to achieve something greater. You have until sunset. The trial ends when either all 3 succeed, all 3 fail, or anyone chooses to abandon their task." What the Empire didn't expect was how quickly the 3 humans would understand the true nature of their challenges. Sarah, the teacher, looked at the sinkhole and saw not just a physical obstacle, but a lesson in patience and observation. Instead of immediately trying to reach the data core, she began testing the sand's behavior, using her understanding of basic physics, knowledge she taught her students every day. Marcus, who had spent years working in the most hostile underwater environments, recognized that the energy barrier wasn't just a containment field, it was a test of empathy. The alien children weren't really in danger, their distress was designed to probe whether humans would risk themselves for other species. And Aisha, who had spent decades organizing her community and bridging cultural divides, saw through the shifting symbols to the underlying pattern. They were variations on universal concepts of home, family, and belonging. What happened next demonstrated why the Empire's understanding of humanity was fundamentally flawed. Sarah used her jacket and what she could find to create a simple pulley system, demonstrating that human innovation doesn't require advanced technology, it requires understanding basic principles and having the creativity to apply them. Marcus approached the energy barrier not with fear or hesitation, but with the calm assurance of someone who had faced death daily in the depths of the ocean. He began singing, a Portuguese lullaby his grandmother had taught him. The alien children, responding to the emotional resonance rather than the words, began to calm. Aisha, instead of trying to decode each shifting symbol, began arranging small stones in patterns that reflected the universal stories she had shared in her community center, tales of struggle, resilience, and triumph that transcended cultural boundaries. The Empire had expected fear, hesitation, and eventually either failure or reckless heroics. Instead, they witnessed something else entirely, humans being human. When one of the alien children reached out through the energy barrier, Marcus didn't hesitate. He stepped through, ignoring the searing pain, and gathered them in his arms. The barrier dissolved, revealing that the children were holograms, but Marcus's willingness to endure pain for others was very real. Sarah's makeshift pulley system shouldn't have worked, the physics were deliberately rigged against it. But she adjusted, compensated, and most importantly, refused to give up. When the sand finally stabilized enough for her to reach the data core, it wasn't through any single solution, but through countless small adaptations. Aisha's response to the shifting symbols became a kind of dialogue. Each time the patterns changed, she adjusted her stone arrangements to tell a new story. Eventually, the doorway stopped shifting, as if finally understanding that human communication isn't about perfect translation, it's about finding common ground. As the sun began to set, Colvex raised his staff to end the trial. But before he could speak, something unprecedented occurred. The three humans, having completed their individual challenges, began moving toward each other across the desert. The Empire hadn't considered this possibility. The trial was supposed to end with either success or failure at the individual challenges. But Sarah, Marcus, and Aisha instinctively understood something that the Empire had never grasped: human spirit isn't measured in individual achievements, but in our connection to each other. They met in the center of the trial area, each carrying what they had gained from their challenges: Sarah's data core, Marcus's proof of empathy, and Aisha's universal stories. Without planning or coordination, they formed a circle and shared what they had learned. The watching galaxy witnessed something remarkable: three ordinary humans, chosen at random, demonstrating that the human spirit isn't about exceptional individuals performing heroic feats. It's about ordinary people supporting each other, sharing knowledge, and facing challenges together. Colvex's crystalline form flickered with uncharacteristic emotion. "The trial of spirit is complete," he announced. "Humanity has demonstrated." He paused, searching for the right words, an unexpected form of spiritual strength. Back in the command center, Harrington smiled. "They wanted to prove that our first success was a fluke, that ordinary humans couldn't match their standards. Instead, they proved that there's no such thing as an ordinary human." Dr. Santos's instruments were picking up unprecedented levels of activity in the Imperial fleet. "They're afraid," she realized. "Not of our technology or our military capability, but of something they can't quantify: our ability to remain fundamentally human even under impossible conditions." As the three representatives were returned to the command center, the galaxy buzzed with new discussions. The Empire had tried to demonstrate human weakness by choosing random representatives. Instead, they had revealed that humanity's strength wasn't in exceptional individuals, but in the extraordinary ordinary, in the teacher who never stops learning, the welder who understands the value of life above all else, and the grandmother who knows that stories can bridge any divide. But everyone knew the hardest test was yet to come. The trial of force would be the Empire's last chance to prove their superiority, and they would hold nothing back. Hudson summed it up perfectly: they tried to break our mind, we showed them how we think. They tried to test our spirit, we showed them who we are. Now they'll try to prove their power, and we'll show them what humanity does best: face impossible odds together. As the sun set over the Sahara, Earth prepared for the final trial. The Empire had learned that they couldn't break human spirit or outsmart human minds. Their last hope lay in overwhelming human strength. But they were about to learn that force comes in many forms, and humanity had been preparing for this moment since they first looked up at the stars and dared to dream. The trial of force and humanity's legacy. The final trial was announced at midnight, Greenwich Mean Time. The Imperial fleet moved into a new formation, their ships creating a vast arena in Earth's orbit. This time, there would be no subtle tests, no psychological warfare. The trial of force was exactly what it claimed to be. Emperor Kisvor himself appeared before the Earth Council, his scaled features set in grim determination. The previous trials have shown us unexpected aspects of your species, he admitted. But strength respects strength. The trial of force will determine, once and for all, your place in the galactic order. The terms were simple, yet daunting. Earth would choose its finest military vessel and crew to face an Imperial warship in single combat. The winner would be determined not by destruction, but by submission. It was to be a demonstration of both power and control. General Hudson stood before the council, his expression grave. They've given us 12 hours to choose our ship and crew. The problem is, even our most advanced vessels are primitive compared to their technology. But Harrington and Dr. Santos exchanged a knowing look. They had been studying something in the data from the previous trials, something that could change everything. The Empire thinks this is about raw power, Dr. Santos explained, pulling up her analysis. But look at these energy readings from their ships. Their technology isn't just advanced, it's standardized. Every vessel follows the exact same protocols, the same attack patterns. Maya Patel, who had proven invaluable during the trial of mind, jumped in. Their quantum signatures are perfectly aligned. Too perfect. They've optimized their technology to the point where innovation has become impossible. Harrington smiled. And that's their weakness. They're expecting us to try to match their power. When we should be showing them something completely different, Hudson finished, finally understanding. Something they've forgotten how to handle. The next 12 hours saw the most remarkable collaboration in human history. While the Empire expected Earth to prepare its most powerful warship, something very different was taking shape in a hangar beneath the Pacific Ocean. The vessel they chose was the ETS Prometheus, an experimental ship that had been deemed too unstable for regular service. Its revolutionary quantum drive didn't try to match Imperial technology, it did something entirely different. The crew selection raised even more Imperial eyebrows. Instead of veteran military officers, Earth chose a mix of perspectives: Captain Sarah Chen, the teacher from the Trial of Spirit, whose understanding of basic principles had proven so valuable, Lieutenant Maya Patel, whose quantum insights had helped crack the trial of mind, and a handful of others whose strengths lay not in military prowess, but in creativity and adaptation. As the Prometheus rose from the ocean to meet its challenger, the Imperial vessel loomed above, a perfect example of their technological superiority. The Imperial commander's voice boomed across space: "Your vessel appears unconventional. Are you certain of your choice?" Captain Chen's response was calm and clear: "We're human. Unconventional is what we do best." The battle that followed would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. The Imperial vessel attacked with perfect precision, its weapons following optimal patterns developed over millennia of combat. But the Prometheus didn't fight back, at least, not in any way the Empire recognized as fighting. Its quantum drive allowed it to exist in multiple probabilistic states simultaneously, making it impossible to target effectively. Every Imperial attack was met not with counterfire, but with movement that seemed to defy physics itself. They're not even trying to hit us, Maya realized, monitoring the quantum fluctuations. They're trying to force us into a predictable response pattern. Chen understood immediately. Then let's show them what happens when you embrace uncertainty. The Prometheus began moving in ways that should have torn it apart. The crew worked in perfect harmony, not despite their differences but because of them. Each person contributed a different perspective, a different way of thinking about space and movement and possibility. The Imperial commander grew increasingly frustrated as none of their attacks landed. Their perfect tactics were useless against an opponent that refused to follow any recognizable strategy. Then came the moment that changed everything. Instead of attacking, the Prometheus initiated a controlled quantum entanglement with the Imperial vessel. For a brief moment, both ships shared the same probabilistic space. "What are you doing?" the Imperial commander demanded, panic evident in their voice. "Showing you what you've forgotten," Chen replied. "The force of possibility." Through the entanglement, the Imperial crew experienced something they had never encountered, the human capacity to exist in uncertainty, to thrive in chaos, to find strength not in perfection but in adaptation. The Imperial vessel's weapons powered down. Not in defeat, but in understanding. Kolvex's voice rang out across space, "The trial of force is complete. Humanity has demonstrated not just strength, but wisdom in its application." But Earth wasn't finished. Harrington stepped forward to address not just the Empire, but the entire watching galaxy. "We did not face these trials to prove our worth to you. We faced them to show every species watching that the Empire's way is not the only way. Strength isn't about domination, it's about growth. And growth requires change, uncertainty, and yes, even failure." The impact was immediate and unprecedented. Across the galaxy, subjugated species began questioning centuries of Imperial doctrine. The Empire's perfect order began showing cracks, not from external force, but from the realization that their quest for perfection had become their greatest weakness. Emperor Kisvor, displaying wisdom that had perhaps earned him his position in the first place, recognized the moment for what it was. "The right of galactic arbitration is concluded," he announced. "Earth has proven itself not just worthy of independence, but capable of teaching us something we had forgotten." The changes that followed weren't sudden or violent. The Empire didn't fall, it evolved. Earth's example sparked a renaissance of innovation and cultural exchange. The rigid hierarchies began to flex and adapt. Species that had been conquered began to find their own voices again. 1 year later, Harrington stood before the First Galactic Council of Equals, where former Imperial subjects now sat alongside their once rulers. "Humanity never sought to defeat the Empire," he told the assembled representatives. "We sought to remind the galaxy that true strength lies not in perfection, but in our capacity to grow, to change, and to face the unknown not with fear, but with hope." The Earth delegation returned home heroes, but they understood that their greatest challenges lay ahead. They had changed the galaxy, but more importantly, they had shown that change itself was not something to be feared. As ships from 100 worlds entered orbit around Earth, bringing traders, scholars, and diplomats eager to learn from humanity, Dr. Santos made one final observation: "They came to test us, to see if we deserved a place in their galaxy. Instead, we showed them that the galaxy belongs to all of us, not because of our strength or our wisdom or our spirit, but because of our endless capacity to imagine something better." The story of humanity's trials became legend, told and retold across the stars. But its true legacy wasn't in the victory itself, but in what it taught the galaxy, that the greatest force in the universe isn't power or perfection, it's the courage to remain true to oneself while daring to change everything. And so, as Earth took its place among the stars, it did so not as a conquered world or even a victorious one, but as a reminder that the universe's greatest stories are still being written, one choice, one challenge, one change at a time.